Good morning, all you PoppyCockians. Hey, welcome. Thanks for joining me here on we'll call this the CockyPop Report because it's all rooster and no flour. Rose couldn't make it this morning because of all that stuff that got going on. So thanks to everybody for showing up here. And good morning, everybody who's here. Let's see, we've got Mass Awakening, Jerry, Kevlar, Billing Tango. Okay, sorry. All right, so let's see. Need to connect. Disciple of Messiah, Brian Staley. Hey guys. All right, so I'm going to start this morning. If you did not catch it last night, you'd wake to a blue wrench. You know what? I've been trying to put all this stuff together. I will address that definitely before this weekend. So next time you guys come into the chat for Saturday show, should you arrive on Saturday, we'll have some wrenches out. I did it before, and I don't know why they've gone away. I don't know what happened there. All right, so I want to take a look here. So last night, if you did not get it, so I did a. Let's see. We did Secrets of Saturn on my channel, crossover stream with Wayne McCroy. You can check that out. It's on my channel there. Great conversation with Wayne McCroy. He's Wayne the Brain. He's an awesome guy. We've gotten to know each other over the past few weeks doing Secrets of Saturn shows and talking offline. And he's just a super guy, and we have all sorts of great conversations. So we had decided, we started getting together on Sundays and just sort of talking about some things and specifically kind of going over some scripture stuff. And then we just decided, hey, we'll open that up to anybody who wants to join. So in the coming weeks, we're going to do it like every other Sunday, 7 a.m. Pacific, 10 a.m. Eastern on every other Sunday. We'll announce that. So we're going to do that. The other thing I want to start with this morning is if you didn't catch it right before that stream, I joined Rose 777, my beloved co-host, who again can't be here this morning, and I miss her dearly already. So we'll try to go through this. I joined her with her friend Drea, the intellectual wino, who she had been in a couple of conversations with Dave Weiss, Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, and also Austin Whitsitt Gets It, talking about the cosmology and that sort of stuff. And so she was unconvinced, and I just wanted to chat with her. I had some questions for her and that sort of stuff. And so specifically, she took on what is known as the Black Swan argument. And there's a photograph which shows it shows a horizon well beyond a known platform. The distance of the platform is over 9 miles, and so the horizon is well beyond that, certainly past 10 miles. And according to geometry, if you've got a globular, a big rock with a diameter of 3,959 miles in circumference or in diameter, with a radius of 3,959. That's early, so yeah. Then the visible horizon can be no further than 1.225 times the square root of the observer's height in feet in miles, right? So it cannot be any more than that. And so with the observer height in that particular shot being about 1.5 feet, it can be no more than about 1.27 miles away. And yet what we see is much further than 10 miles, right? So this would be a big problem. The typical response there is refraction, right? And so she showed a video, and I'll show a little bit of this this video. And so here's the thing. I wanted to first of all apologize. I burst into laughter at the end, and it was just poorly timed, just before I left. And so I wanted to say, Dre, if you're watching, and I know you probably aren't, it probably offended you. I didn't mean to. I was not laughing at you. I was laughing at the video itself, and what the guy said, because it just showed a clear, I wouldn't say even misunderstanding. I think it's a misrepresentation. I think the intention here is to, again, misrepresent what's going on. I'm not going to use audio here. I'm just going to use claim fair use here. And again, hope to not get a copyright strike. What he's trying to demonstrate here is that if you look here, there's some blue there, right? And so from this particular camera angle, you can't see the blue beyond the tack. And what he's going to do is he claims that refraction is going to allow you to see beyond what would be the horizon. Right. So here's the problem with that. And I started laughing because of his conclusions, not at Drea. I wouldn't be like that. But her answer afterwards I was already laughing. And so I said, you understand why this is happening, right? Yeah, because refraction. I'm like, well, no, that's not a refraction. That's a magnification. And because they're using a convex lens here. And I was like, you know what that is? She's like, magnifying glass. I'm like, you know how that works, right? She's like, to magnify. I'm like, no. Okay, so I just wanted to explain that a little bit, and why that's a misrepresentation. Of course, I had to leave, so I didn't get a chance to really do that, and so I kind of felt bad. And again, Terry, I did not. I was not laughing at you. I was laughing at the video, although you did use it to try to indicate, you know. So, try to indicate what was going on. That's just a misunderstanding. So here's the issue. Is that what you've got here is he's using a convex lens. And a convex lens, what it does is the ray of light comes in, right? And so it goes through the radius here. So so let me show this. So refraction basically is a bending of light or a bending of any ray or wave due to hitting a media or coming in contact, going through a media that's different from the previous one, right? And so whenever you have, so basically there's a lot of fundamental physics that go along here, but basically what you've got is the angle of incidence will equal the angle of reflection if something is reflected, but things don't all reflect. Some things get absorbed, some things get refracted, some things get diffused, and some things continue on, right? So as you can see here, what happens, the light comes in, it enters a more dense medium, and that more dense medium causes, right here at the angle of incidence, at the tangent line, right? So the top part begins to turn this way, and so this hits later, and so this turns like that, but it continues in a straight line. And that's the thing about rays, is they continue in straight lines. They are not curved. And so the argument made in that video was that it's curving around as in on a radius. And that is simply not the case. That goes against the laws of physics. Light or other rays like that do not go in curve. It's not a curvature. It's a single line, right? So let's go back here. So when you're using a convex lens, what happens, there's a focal point. It's a specifically designed lens, right? So it creates a focal point at which at each angle of incidence, this curves here, it goes to that point, this curves here, goes to that point. And so the cumulative effect of all of these particular rays going to the same focal point creates a spot here. And because of that, it creates a magnification effect. But each one is a straight line. There are no curves, right? And this is the argument that they're trying to present here, right, is that this has been called by some the donkey dick curve, but they're trying to indicate that there is a curve across the radius, 7/6r or infinite over 6r or something like that. And this is a gross misrepresentation. It goes against the laws of physics, and this is why I was laughing, is the guy in that video is trying to say that this is what's occurring, and that's simply not true. It's a lie. And Drea said that I was ignorant. I've been accused of a lot of things, but not that. But she said, that's your opinion. I'm like, no, look, I work, I didn't actually get a chance to say this, but I told Jason Lindgren later that, hey, I've been working in applied physics for more than 40 years, and it's part of my job. I have worked very hard. You can bend the laws of physics pretty hard. You can do a lot of things to bend the laws of physics, but I've never been able to break them. And your opinion has no bearing whatsoever on the way the laws of physics work. So anyway, so that explains that. That's what why I started laughing, is because the explanation given by that guy in the video, not Andrea. So I wanted to just explain that I was not laughing at her, the poor girl. But what it does indicate is what I showed it expressed to her at the top, is that we all have a bit of confirmation bias, and I kind of wanted to ask the question, so clearly she and many others like her think that those of us who have now questioned the model that we're given are stupid. Right, we're just stupid. We're so dumb that we don't understand. It's like, what do you think, we missed that day of school or something? I don't understand, right? And really what happens is, if you're going to go after truth, you got to be able to do it with some humility, to such a degree that you can admit that you're wrong. And I've been wrong a number of times. Now, not usually. But I mean, when and I explained to her at the top of that meeting, right, is that I use a process called abductive reasoning, which is a combination of inductive and deductive reasoning. So deductive reasoning kind of works from the top down, and you eliminate all the possibilities until what's left is what's the truth. Abductive or inductive reasoning looks at the evidence and tries to work from bottom up and develop a hypothesis based on the available evidence, and then you sort of test that model against what you know and come out with the answer. And abductive reasoning is sort of a combination of both. And that's what I try to, so she seemed pretty offended after I left. I mean, I imagine. I mean, I wouldn't want anybody laughing at me. I wasn't intending to laugh at her. That's just not how I am. But I did find it pretty funny that the way that the guy tried to explain what was going on based on. Again, that's a gross misrepresentation of what's happening, because all it's being done is they're using that lens and the focal point to go past the visible. So you're basically using it to peer around a corner. That's all. It's like using a mirror and saying that's refraction. That's simply not how it works. And again, refraction is a distortion effect. Distortion does not move, lift things up relative to itself. Again, this is relative to a horizon. I just think there's a lot of misunderstandings going on, and people badly want to believe what they want to believe, so they choose the narrative that pleases them. And this is true, for example, if you just see clearly, some people will watch CNN and some people will watch Fox, both of which are lies, but they choose the one that represents the narrative that they like. And I've seen this over and over, for example, in social media. Well, somebody will post something and it comes from a quote authoritative news source. It's supposedly a credible news source, and then somebody will follow up and say, well, you need to get a more fair and balanced or a more objective view, and then they post their own from another source that disagrees with that. So, and by the way, neither of them were true. So, in any case, this is what we see again. Is no one, even me, is immune from confirmation bias. We want the things that we believe to be true, and I found out that I had to set aside my beliefs, and this is one of the reasons that I first started listening to Crow 777. Is I like the tagline, which was belief is the enemy of knowing, and I have said before that many of my major discoveries and epiphanal moments came on the heels of having to examine deeply and let go of deeply held beliefs. And when you have a belief, you tend to want to defend it, right? And then from that point, you're no longer able to accept or even consider new information that might be contrary to those beliefs because you want to defend your own position. And that does not allow you to see things clearly. And so when it comes to any of these items, certainly, again, it's very easy to hang on to something very closely. And again, what I see in Dre is what I see in a lot of people is they just want to figure that people are ignorant, and we've got this whole body of science. And if you just if you were to look at it again top down and say if you consider even the possibility, even if the remotest possibility that we've been lied to, then you have to accept that that's a possibility and begin to tear it apart and look for the answers. And again, this refraction and light is not the only one. There are, as I kind of alluded to last night, there's about 50 plus different ways that I've disproven to my satisfaction the current heliocentric model. Again, does that mean that I can claim that I know exactly what it is? No, I can say for sure I call myself a geometric agnostic, and that I don't know what it is exactly. It appears to be stationary, flat, motionless, and there's a bunch of evidence that would indicate that the snow globe model is probably the closest, because the further I go back, many ancients had that particular model. Again, I don't go with the model because I can't prove it, but that seems to be the preponderance of evidence that would indicate that is the closest to it. Can I prove it? No. So basically, I can't make any positive claims other than I can say I can falsify particular claims. It's been said that extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and it's just not there when you look deeply into it from my perspective. Again, I've looked through many of these things, and I have a pretty broad background in physics as well as other science disciplines, and it simply doesn't work. From my perspective, I can pretty much plainly say that these things don't work. So in any case, again, I apologize, Trey, if you thought I was mocking you. I wasn't. It just hit me really funny because of the way that the guy wrapped it up and what he said and what he was trying to demonstrate is absolutely not what's being shown there. It's a deceptive move. So I appreciate if you want to hold on to that and think that supports your position. Unfortunately, physics says otherwise. Okay, so let's get it back into more poppycock, and I'm sure if you've been taking a look at the news, and hopefully you haven't, but we'll take a look at this. So George Floyd, the African-American guy who's apparently there's a video of him being what appears to be murdered by Minneapolis police. I mentioned on last night's episode of the Secrets of Saturday Unintended Consequences crossover that there was a number of problems with that video, and I went through some of them. I could go through more, but just quickly, if you look at that video with some scrutiny, what you'll see is that the police car has a license plate that says police. That's a pretty big giveaway right there. The policemen themselves are very, I would say, almost laconic in their sort of blasé approach, not at all indicating what I've seen in dozens and dozens of videos previously, that they're jacked up and on adrenaline, which they probably would be if they were, trying to take down, quote, a criminal. The clarity of the audio is remarkable for a camera phone. In fact, again, it defies the way that those physics work. Camera phones, have a microphone. It's the same microphone that you use to speak into. There are not multiple mics typically. There may be multiple cameras, but not multiple microphones. And so what they do, most of them are omnidirectional, which means that they receive sound from every direction, and they're designed such that it's what's called AGC, or auto gain control, so that they look for the loudest signal and sort of focus in on that, and then sort of suppress background noise. It looks for other background noise and tries to get rid of it because it assumes that whoever's talking, that's the primary thing. So typically what you would get in that sort of situation, you'd get a lot of street noise, buses going by and cars, that sort of thing, and the people behind it, the people talking right next to it would be the loudest. And yet you can very clearly hear, both Mr. Floyd and the police officers talking. It's not like right there, but it certainly does sound very clear and almost as if mic'd up. And also I noted that there's a stereo image in terms of the audio, which is absolutely impossible with a single point source microphone. So it does appear to me that it's been done in a studio, a video editing suite, and that the audio was added later. So these create some problems with that narrative, and so the question is why? Why would it make police look in the bad light like that? Well, certainly, again, we've seen the full court press from the media, as we have with many of these cases. You'll also notice that many of them, for example, Brown in St. Louis, and many of these have to do with African Americans specifically, but dealing with the police. And so the whole Colin Kaepernick kneeling down thing, this is all part of that same deal. And so from my perspective, again, I've never been a fan of the police state. I've taken a lot of heat for being, quote, a cop hater. I'm certainly not, I don't hate people. That's just not the way I roll, but I am not a supporter, and I'm very much against the militarized police state, especially when you train them to be military operatives. They have to see an enemy, and that enemy inevitably becomes the citizenry. They're also told that they're being targeted, which is generally not true. And so they perceive everyone as an enemy. So when they shoot somebody or harm them and say, I was afraid for my life, that may well be true. Although I think if you're that afraid, you should probably find some other job. But there's a number of problems with it without getting too deep into that. Why would they do this? Why would they put that out in the media so hard? Again, from my perspective, it's a Hegelian dialectic. Dialectic. So you have the two things there, problem, reaction, solution, but you also have this divide and conquer, which then divides people up. So whether it's the red, blue, left, right paradigm, or black, white, race relations, that sort of stuff. It creates a hostility and distrust among people. And as long as we don't trust each other, we can't come together and fight against them. So my suspicion is that this is just intended to inflame things such that it creates a pretext for clamping down even harder. And so we immediately saw that with a bunch of riots last night in Minneapolis, as well as there was protests in Los Angeles and Memphis and some other places. So we have protests, looting erupt in Minneapolis over racially charged killing by police. So racially charged, again, that's your key takeaway right there. So these are the things to look for. And again, I just strongly suggest that you don't, the term auto hoax has been used. I would just say, in everything that you read in the media, again, these days I don't see anything that's actually fully legitimate. There are elements of truth in it, certainly, but they have an agenda, and they're trying to lie to you. So understand, try to work backwards and see what's their point. This is another big item here. More poppycock. Zuckerberg knocks Twitter for fact-checking Trump, says private companies shouldn't be the arbiter of truth. Okay, then. Don't try to be that. Every time we post something on Facebook, there's a little fact checker there, and it has nothing but poppycock, right? So they just flip the script, and if it doesn't go with the mainstream narrative, they're going to call it false fake news. I even had them ask if I was posting a link from Babylon Bee, which is satire, and they go, "Are you sure you want to post this? It's not true." I'm like, of course it's not true. It's the Babylon Bee. dipshits. In any case, yes, this is unadulterated poppycock. So let me flip this over here real quick so I can kind of keep an eye on the chat. What'd you miss? Poppycock, Thunder Chicken. There's just lots of poppycock going on. All right. So if they're going to not be the arbiter of truth, then stop trying to do that, right? So that's, again, talking out both sides of their mouth. Here we have coronavirus deaths top 100,000 in the United States. And as a result, well, again, those numbers continue to change. We've been told everything from 30,000, 100,000, 200,000, coming in a million. So we got all kinds of, nonsense going on there, and they just pushing that fear narrative. One I wanted to cover here is this is one that wanted to address. California health officer warns state reopening too quickly as coronavirus cases top 100,000. So here we have, again, the conflicting reports that supposedly this beer bug has a incubation period of 14 days or better. And so within less than 72 hours after reopening some states, they're saying, we're getting a quick uptick in the number of cases. Well, how is that possible if it's got an incubation period of 2 weeks? Again, they're lying out both sides of their mouth. And this is clearly, again, not about health and safety. It has everything to do with control and gaining consent from as many of the population as they can to push the narratives. And Wayne and I discussed this at length last night on the Secrets of Saturn stream that was actually on my channel. If you, again, go back and take a look at that, there's a lot of good information in there. And one of the things that I see Good Times for All here in the chat. And, again, he's from with Iron Realm Media. I joined them last Friday, and it just sort of we were talking, and it sort of blurted out. And Wayne and I started taking a little bit deeper look at this, and so we spent a fair amount of time last night going over this. That keep in mind that you are a bioelectric chemical. Electromagnetic being, right? And so I guess I got rid of that. Shoot. So, we know that we have, I guess the woo-woo people, the New Agers call it an aura, but we do have an electromagnetic field that surrounds the body. And there are a number of neuroreceptors that go to the thorax, the belly area. So, in fact, there's nearly as many there as go from the brain to the rest of the body. So these what's now called the belly brain, these neuroreceptors both push out and receive in information from the outside world at an electromagnetic spectra. And so we constantly send and receive information about our world and push things out, and so other people can respond and react to this. And it's part of the way that we communicate with one another. And this is why you get a gut feeling about something. So what we have is by implementing social distancing and keeping people 2 meters or 6 feet apart, what they're doing, isolating people, is brutal. It is almost a death sentence because we absolutely need, not just want and desire, but we absolutely need human contact and interaction with one another. We're social beings, and literally babies who are not bonded will die. They'll just give up and die, or they become, if they survive, they have radical attachment disorder, which physiologically rewires their brain such that they'll never, ever be, I guess, normal is the way to put it. It's, it's really sad. They used to call it Korean baby syndrome because following the Korean War, there were many, many orphans, Korean orphans. And they were just kind of left on their own. They weren't taking care of them, and they never did get bonded. And so many would actually just die because they weren't bonded. And so I see this as a critical issue with the social distancing. There is no evidence whatsoever that this supposed beer bug, whether you believe in it or not, there's no evidence that it's an airborne pathogen, and certainly staying away from each other is going to help in any case. Obviously, masks don't help. I mean, that's basic math to see that we're looking at a supposed, again, pathogen that's on the order of 0.012 nanometers in size, and then you've got the weft of a cotton, a commercial weave cotton, even if it's a tight weave, is something like 25 to 150 microns. I mean, again, the analogy has been made that it's similar to trying to stop mosquitoes with a chain link fence, and probably, I mean, It's even worse than that, right? I would say like a screen door in a submarine. But it's just it's a placebo effect, and really, again, what I see is, as most of us have said, it is simply. It's a mechanism, right? It's a way to exert control over someone, and the other thing it does is it blocks the face. And so, in addition to not being able to be in proximity to people and make use of and enjoy the human connection, we also can't see their face, and so we can't see them smile. We don't get any of the micro expressions, and when people are out there in fear, and agitation, it's turning people against each other. And so this is really, really unconscionable. I mean, it is brutal, and I would say to the point of being evil, what they're doing by keeping people separate and making them wear masks, none of which has any basis in science. Really what it is, it's a matter of control, and we have seen enormous upticks in depression and anxiety from this, and it's not just the circumstances of people being in financial difficulty, but it's because we cannot interact with each other. And the most vulnerable populations are going to be the elderly. Again, we can't, they don't allow people to go to nursing homes, for example. My buddy Joe, who often shows up in my streams, he's been a friend of mine since we were kids, right? So for 45 plus years now. And we were songwriting partners back in the day and played in multiple bands together. And he had been doing music for seniors' homes. That's kind of what he was doing. He would do 2 or 3 shows a day, going around to different seniors' homes and doing classic songs for them and doing requests and that sort of stuff. And of course, when the beer bug hit, they shut that down. And I've been trying to help him do virtual shows and stream it in, but most of them aren't set up for that. And so I'm kind of trying to walk him through it. But again, it's destroyed his ability to make an income. But moreover, people can't visit their relatives. And so the old folks are being just literally left to die with no human contact whatsoever. And this is, it is, in my opinion, just straight up evil, because it is not a mistake. It's not an accident. It's very intentional. All right. So I'll get off my soapbox for a minute. So here we have another thing with Rose 777. She hosted an epic panel yesterday of folks. We had David Wise, Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole, Mark Sargent, Russian Vids even showed up. Hey, Joe, how are you, man? I see Joe just showed up. I was just talking about you, buddy. You missed it. So it was an epic panel. Mark Sargent, Russian Vids, Deep Inside the Rabbit Hole. Gosh, who else was there? Anyway, they were watching this SpaceX launch, and I called it the moment I walked in the room. I'm like, they're going to scrub that, and sure enough, they scrubbed it. Said it was bad weather. Okay. I was taking 9-2 odds that they would even do a Challenger thing and blow it up so that they could kick the can further down the road and say they can't do it for a while, but we'll see. So this is the kind of thing that, again, we can see as we look for poppycock. There's plenty of it. We've got, again, this Amy Cooper thing. This is the, mentioned this in the last show with Rose, the Central Park Karen. It's actually, Amy Cooper. Again, this seems very contrived to me, such that it's just aggravating, racial tensions. That seems to be the only primary motivation here, is to aggravate racial tensions and to create a divide, to drive a wedge between people, such that we do not join together and take down the powers that be and that ought not be. Well, good, Joe. I'm glad you were listening. Good morning, Sue, Zach Zabala, and everybody. 9-2 odds, you'd take that? Yeah, I mean, that's pretty good odds, right? That they're going to do something like that. That's a pretty decent odds. You could get a payout on that. Absolutely. So what we see here, one of the things I noticed this morning is they're moving on a little bit from the beer bug narrative. It used to be about 90%, and now it's moved back to just about 45% of the news feed that I get. So they're moving up some of these international conflict again. We got Russia flying MiGs close to U.S. and Libya. So we're now moving on a little bit. I think that this is just part of the, again, the Overton window. They move forward, they move back, they move forward, they move back, tighten it up, release it a little bit, tighten it up, release it a little bit. And so this is kind of, what we see with the Overton window. But as we were discussing last night with Wade McCroy, I think we're of a concern, and I know that many people in the community now are of a concern that, they keep talking about the new normal. And in fact, they had a whole litany of these social engineering phrases from new normal, and in every ad you hear now, it's in these difficult times. If I hear that one more time, I want to slap somebody, right? And social distancing, new normal, contact tracing. They had these words already prepared to throw out and to be part of the new lexicon. And of course, it's newspeak type stuff, but it was already prepared, right? And we see a variety of ways. For example, we were talking about the contract tracing and the apps, and again, this indicates prior knowledge, because at the level and scale that they're talking about, in order to do something of that with that dynamic and that amount of data and the way that they're processing it, requires infrastructure, and it requires infrastructure of such a way with testing, right? It could not be done, in a matter of weeks, even with all the money in the world, paying a bunch of people to do it. It requires testing of the level that it just couldn't be done. And so the fact that they're rolling this out already, we talked about the fact that in the new iOS update 13.5, it contains contact tracing elements in that software and that operating system. We recommend that perhaps you do not download that if you haven't already, because you are automatically enrolling in a contact tracing thing. So again, recommend that you do not do that. So the other thing that I probably don't recommend is I've seen a number of people put out sort of a cut and paste sort of meme, right? That says, all my friends, if you're gonna engage in the contact tracing, remove me from your contact list. I think the danger there, again, it's kind of like a bit of virtue signaling in the same way that they're doing it on the, I don't know, I want to say the sheep side or whatever, the wool wearing folk. Again, I don't want to use epithets or minimize them, but those who are fully bought into that mindset, they wear their masks with the the kind of virtue signaling thing. Proudly, they're proud about it, and there's this, again, false modus tollens. A therefore B, so not A, or not B therefore not A. I wear a mask because I care. You don't wear a mask, then you don't care, and then you want people to die. And of course, that's a false argument and a false dichotomy. But what we see them proudly doing it, and again, trying to shame people into compliance. But now we're seeing sort of a similar reverse virtue signaling. And hey, if you're gonna, I don't want to be part of it. So if you're gonna do that contact tracing crap, take me out of your contact list. I mean, I understand the sentiment behind it, certainly, but I think it serves a couple of purposes. One is to further isolate you, and it going to create hostility with those around you who are not bought in. It removes your ability to plant further seeds and to stay in relationship with them, and hopefully that they might come around at some point. But it also helps self-identify, and certainly by virtue of the fact that you guys are even here, right? That we're talking about these topics, we've already, to a large degree, if you've made it this far already, you've already self-identified, right? You've already shown the man, right, who you are and what you're interested in, because everything that you do is surveilled. So, and there's no way around that. Everything is hardware compromised from the very outset. We've covered that topic numerous times and beat that horse to death. That you're already, everything you do is already, very closely scrutinized. And the only thing that using VPN or other methods to try to prevent that does is just raise a big red flag, right? It's just, you're trying to do something that you don't want them to look at. And so it's already compromised. And you've already self-identified. And this, I see many of these things that we see rolling out that are PoppyCock or, any of these, I've mentioned a number of times, like if you go all the way back to 9/11, the passport, right, pristine passport that falls down to the ground, or the lack of any wreckage at Shanksville or any airplane parts at the Pentagon, right? These things are not, in my opinion, mistakes. They are breadcrumbs laid there for those of us who have the temerity and the desire to look at it closer, and it gives us, it puts a big target on us because we self-identify as that we're not following the program, right? We're breaking from the script. We've become divergent, and then they sort of tend to isolate us. And if you are on social media, which again I don't recommend, but I am, so there you go, because it's a way for me to kind of spread the word to the normies or whatever, and keep in touch with people. So I use it with the understanding of what it is, and it has inherent drawbacks and evil in that way. So you got to tip, I guess. But if you're on social media, right? If you're engaged in that, certainly what you see is that their algorithms now, especially over the last 8 or 10 months, they create echo chambers, right? So those people who are kind of on the same page philosophically, politically, that sort of things, they put you in these groups automatically, and they exclude other people. And so I'd say 3 or 4 years ago, many of the people that I had on my social media contact list were people that I've known for a very long time, either industry professionals or people that I've known and gone to school with, or once worked with, that sort of thing. And certainly over the last few years, and especially in the last 8 to 10 months, that has now almost exclusively become, my tinfoil hat Faraday fedora buddies, right? It's almost exclusively. I very rarely get any interaction with other people, even my family. And I don't think, again, that's by mistake. They're creating these echo chambers and kind of dividing people up because this is the divide and conquer. And so when you add all these elements together and look at it overall, it does seem to be very, very concerning that they may not be backing up. They may be going for the whole enchilada. And again, I'm not trying to spread any fear here because, again, I'm not afraid, but I am concerned, and I'm certainly looking at it. But I would say it's a good time to be prepared. I'm going to take a moment here and try to kind of look through the chat real quick. It's difficult to do both at the same time. I do, but it kind of helps you kind of lose your train of thought a little bit. So I'm going to try to just take a moment and take a look. I see people still talking about the thing with intellectual wino last night. I laughed really hard, and it just tickled me. You know how you get tickled, you just can't stop laughing. It just tickled me because the conclusions the guy drew at the end of the video, and I really wasn't laughing at her. I understand the situation, I understand the position, and ego gets in the way, and you don't want to be wrong, and especially if you feel like you're a smart person, right? That you don't want to be dumb, you don't want to be fooled, and so you accept things that you normally wouldn't with a clear eye. And so she just pulled up something that she thought supported her position, and I was laughing at the conclusions the guy in the video drew, so I wasn't really laughing at her. I didn't mean to be disrespectful. It struck me as funny, and I couldn't stop. In fact, I was still laughing when we started the next stream with Wayne. I was just tickled, right? You know how it is. Anyway, so I just wanted to explain that, and if you missed it this morning, you can back up to the beginning, and I explain why I started laughing and what the misrepresentation from the video was, because it was definitely misrepresented. It's that video it's not just mistaken, it's misleading intentionally. It feels to me that they're misleading. So if you guys have any questions this morning or anything you'd like to discuss, I'm happy to do that. I don't have Rose here to go off on tangents and show the love that she always does. Again, I miss her very much. Her and Jason are really tight. Spot. Again, I'll let them talk about it. I don't want to be out of school, but they bought a house, which is awesome, and they're trying to get moved into it. And then they had their house that they were in flood, and so it's just a big mess right now. And so they're just exhausted. I was talking to them both last night, and they're just really worn out from this whole thing. Nachikita, the tinfoil fedora hats should be available. Yes, I go with the Faraday fedora. That's my stylish view. So I see, let's see what, Trey Clark is here. Trey, you got anything to say about that? Let's see, Plane Drifter. We got Mr. Cut Folks, Magic Sister, Camera Bear, Free Energy, Sue, one of my close friends. We've got to know each other since she kind of joined it up, and she's just an awesome person, and she's so encouraging. It's outstanding. I saw something here. Do you know or have opinions on vortex math or rodent quills? So yeah, vortex is really interesting stuff. I kind of got into this looking as a combination thing. I was doing research into the nature of water. And in fact, that's one of the things that first put me in contact with crows. I was doing some research into water and its physical properties. And water has 42 unique and anomalous physical properties just in the standard states of physics. It's states that is unusual and outside what we would expect in a standard chemical model. In other words, what we understand about the physical properties and material sciences, it's anomalous to that. And so when I started studying into that, then I really fell deep into the rabbit hole and looking at the work of Dr. Emoto, and how water seems to take impressions of intention and reflects that when it crystallizes. Certainly look into that if you haven't looked into cymatics, CYMATICS. Take a look into cymatics and how the nature of wave propagation works in a media like water, what happens there. But one of the things that I came across, and I think many people now are becoming more familiar with, a guy named Victor Schauberger, who was an Austrian guy in the early 20th century, and he was a forestry guy. And he started just observing nature, and one of the things that he was fascinated with was water and the water cycles as it dealt with trees and the different flora and fauna there. And he got really into looking at the vortex stuff, and so I was fascinated. He's got an impeller, and unfortunately it was taken apart. His son and grandson are trying to pick it apart. It is really fascinating stuff, and the idea of implosion versus explosion and how nature works. And Schauberger had a phrase. He said, just copy, observe, and mimic nature, and that's how you get to what you should be doing. And so he had a number of different things. If you look at his impeller technology and his look at vortexes, it's fascinating, really fascinating stuff. And so I highly recommend it. I haven't done any of the math to try to repurpose it elsewhere, other than to say, as I look at the way I see cosmology, I've been trying to kind of figure it out as well. Again, I don't claim a model. I don't have one, but I have some hypotheses. And one of those, the one that makes the most sense to me with what the preponderance of available evidence, is a quadrupolar toroidal field model. And so vortexes would be a natural result of the interaction of those fields. So absolutely, vortex is fascinating stuff, and we see that we see it in nature all the time. Of course, we look at tornadoes and that sort of stuff, water spouts and all that sort of stuff. We certainly see it in nature, and it corresponds with mathematical formula that we can describe. But the thing about the laws of physics, right, are that they don't tell us why. They tell us what, and we can certainly observe them, and they're consistent. And that's what I was trying to explain in between laughter to Drea last night, was that physics doesn't care what we think about it. It's not a matter of opinion. It just is. And frankly, from my own perspective, I barely understand it, right? I can observe it, but it doesn't tell us why. It tells us what. But when you're using the scientific method, that's a cause and effect relationship. We don't know cause and effect of, for example, the principles of, like, the second law of thermodynamics and entropy. We know what, we can measure it, we can predict with it, but we don't know why. I mean, we can infer some things, but we don't really understand much about the nature of the universe, other than we can observe it and try to make some inferences about it. But the idea that scientism has it all worked out and they know everything, that's poppycock. That's poppycock times 50. It's orders of magnitude of poppycock, because every time they tell you it's settled science, there's no such thing. I mean, or very early on, I learned that every rabbit hole that you go down, whatever discipline of science you look into, it eventually always goes fractal. Each question that you answer opens up 10 more and more difficult questions, and the why becomes impossible to answer. And in fact, most of academia starts using buzzwords and jargon right away to keep people out and to create confusion, when you could use a much easier, much more simple, direct relationship in terms of words and descriptions. But they start using jargon, and ultimately, it always comes down to this. In every academic paper that I've ever read, it almost always comes down to this. In a process we don't yet fully understand, XXX, right? So we don't know. We just don't know. We get far and we can try to explain some things and describe a few things, but we simply don't know much, right? And the more we know, the more we or again, those of us who are, I guess, humble enough to see it, realize that the more I put it this way, the more I know, the less I understand. Right? It's difficult to understand the why behind it. So. Gravity exists because I believe in it. Yeah, right. Yeah, the gravity is a funny one. People will always go, well, drop a mic. Oh, there you go, demonstration of gravity. No, that's just demonstration that the item is more dense than the media in which it's in, which is air, and so it goes downward. Directionality is a thing, probably a electrostatic force, probably, but again, difficult to prove. But the entire idea of mass attracting mass, not demonstratable at any scale. We're told it's only at a planetary or galactic scale. Come on, right? But you can't demonstrate it other than in make believe. And then that's was superseded again 105 years ago with Einsteinian version of gravity, which is that it's an effect of the uneven distribution of mass. Again, can't be demonstrated. Space-time is it's an intellectual construct. You can't bend a concept. I can't bend love. I can't bend desire. It's an idea, right? So these things are demonstrably nonsense. And the thing about gravity in total is like they just throw away the entire thing of relative density. Well, relative density explains it all. You don't need anything else. All you need is directionality, and that can easily be described with a dielectric or electromagnetic direction. Charge, which just tells it which way to go. That's it. That's all you need. You don't need anything else. Let's see, Green Queen. I sent a couple of things. Oh, yes, a few days ago. Yes, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Green Queen, for hipping me to that. I so appreciate it. Give me just a moment. You sent me some stuff, and I got so distracted with everything going on. Let me come here. It'll take me just a moment to get to that. So any other questions? Let's see. Cut folks is high. All right. So I'm going to try. Just everything's going so slow here. I'm going to try to get to this. So Green Queen sent a couple of items that she wanted me to show you for Poppycock, and it's oh, come on. Everything is so slow here. I haven't. I'm on this borrowed laptop. It's like way old, and now it's going to lock up. This is awesome. Okay, so we'll try that. I'm just going to have to try this again. All right, so I apologize. I'm really trying less to get there. Let's do this. Let's see what... okay. Any other questions while I'm desperately trying to get to this? Where are you? Here. Okay. Okay. I'm looking for this. Which one? You gave me a whole list of stuff, Les. Yeah, here's one. God, you gave me a whole bunch of stuff. We have contact tracing across Canada. We have exosomes and the what's happening in CV10, CV19. Let's see here. We have which one specifically you want me to hit, Green Queen? Which one in particular? Because you have so many. Bill Gates and the population control grid. That's a definite one. If you haven't looked into Bill Gates of hell and what's going on there, let's see here. This is one. And again, I just apologize for just jumping around here and making you stop while I try to figure out what's going on here. So here we go. We're looking at trying to get the relevant information here. Green Queen, I may have to just drop back 5 yards and punt and try it again on Tuesday. There's so much, and I was unprepared. And I appreciate you have sent me so much stuff, and I'm trying to filter all through it. Here's one. Let's see that I wanted to address. Let's see here. I don't know if I can get to it. Nurse claiming hospital murders. Yes, that is one, definitely. So this has been going around social media for a while. Let me get this queued up here. If you haven't seen it, let's do this. I'll bring it over here. I got to bring this up, show this, and I need to bring this over here so you can see that. Okay, so this gal, it claims to be, she's a nurse, and she goes on a big, it's a fairly involved video. I'm sure if you haven't seen it yet, you probably will. That she claims that there are, the hospitals are letting black people die, that they don't care. It's a racist thing. And she starts weeping, and she's like, I don't know what to do. But really, again, this is one very much like the Port of Seattle cop and a number of others that seem to be giving you a narrative that you want to hear. So you want to hear that somebody from the inside is saying that things are going wrong, and that she's being a whistleblower. But again, there's a number of things that are unusual about this video, and she does seem to play it up like a crisis actor. There are a number of things that would tip me to the fact that, again, this is probably not as legitimate as it's made out to be. Again, it is right on that same thing of the what we see with the Floyd thing is that it's a race relations issue, right? And so if you want to watch it, you can see what's happening. You can see this, the thumbnail of that video. I'm not going to play it for you, but you can easily find it. It's all over YouTube. It's all over social media. But I'm going to call Poppycock on this one. Again, not to auto hoax everything, but she's strikes me as this strikes me as fairly contrived, much like many of the others. I mean, again, primarily because she's relating a certain narrative in a particular way that's designed to elicit an emotional response, and you're being handled. Is basically what I'm gonna. It says right on her page that she's an actress, right? So that doesn't surprise. Have you seen my surprise face? Yeah, no. That's going to be true with nearly all of these, disingenuous distraction event, crisis thespians. They almost all identify as actors, right? And even Neil deGrasse Tyson is an actor. Again, in everything that you see, especially the things in the media that is designed to elicit a powerful emotional response, especially the ones with the people killing other, like cops killing people, or the jogger incident, or Central Park Karen, right? These are intentionally designed to get a rise out of you, and when you're in a heightened emotional state, you cannot think clearly, right? And that's just proven. It's not a dig on anybody. You just can't. You can't think clearly when you're in a heightened emotional state, and you make rash, poor decisions. And so you're reactionary. You cannot respond. You just react. And anytime that you're faced with that, be aware that it's very likely that somebody is handling you. My wife and I discuss frequently how when we watch movies, and even sometimes in television commercials, right, they're masters at emotional manipulation. And in a 60-second commercial, they can tug at your heartstrings and make you start tearing up. I don't know if you guys remember, if you're old enough to remember back at the old AT&T commercials, reach out and touch someone, right? And they'd show you how important it is to spend money on long distance. You don't even have that anymore. But long distance calling, right, to keep in touch with your family, friends. And they play this emotional, sappy music underneath and show you some emotional tugging heartstring thing. They're masters at it. I can watch a movie and I have no real suspension of disbelief whatsoever. I know that intellectually, I know it's a movie. I know exactly what's going to happen. In fact, even when I've seen the movie before, I know exactly what's going to happen. They'll get to the part, and the music starts up. The cinematography is good, and you just can't help it, right? It's just they're master manipulators of the human emotion, and so to consider the idea that you're not being manipulated seems preposterous when they clearly tell you, and they have been saying for at least as far as I can tell, 150 plus years, that they studied very in depth the nature of the human animal, our psychology, and how to manipulate us. And you think they're not going to use it? Right? Especially when you see direct one-to-one evidence of the things that they say were effective. You see those happening in the media. Again, if you haven't studied in Edward Bernays, take a look at that. This is absolutely, absolutely one-to-one correlation. And you can see from all these documents, the things that they planned are coming to fruition. Green Queen, we've been hearing for quite some time that pedo are going to be indicted. Fauci, complete lies. Yeah, I'm not going to bash on. I know a lot of people like to go after, Q-tards or Q-tips or whatever, those that follow the Q narrative. Again, I just call it hopium. It seems to, this seems to be another psyop or distraction where it's a story that you want to hear. It's a great story, right? It makes you want this comeuppance. You badly want those who are, doing the bad things to get theirs. But what it does do is you just trust the plan. Sit there with your hands in your pockets and do nothing. Right. So it gets people to be inert and just sit there and do nothing while it continues. And they throw out little bits and pieces and evidence. And there's a bunch of pictures going around of different people from Obama to Oprah having what appears to be ankle bracelet monitors on, saying that Hanks is in Gitmo and all this stuff. Again, I don't buy any of it. Right. I just don't. I'm not going to tell you what to believe. That's totally up to you. But I'm saying use good discernment. Right. You're being lied to. And if it's in the media and if it's being pushed hard, chances are it's a lie. Right. I mean, I can go through every one of these news reports and it's simply not true. Right. It's just not true. So I don't know any other way to put it. They're lying to you to such a degree that. Again, I can go through every single one of these news articles that's listed here in like a Google or CNN or any of them, and point out that it's a misrepresentation at best. At best, it's a misrepresentation, and some of it's just flat out lies. Right? Some of it's 90% maybe accurate, but with a twist on it to put it in a context, again, to elicit an emotional response or to make you think of it in a certain way. You're being handled. And that's all I can tell you. Got to keep us divided, especially right now. Yeah, absolutely. These they can't let us trust each other. They can't, they can't let us come together because if that happens, we outnumber them. Yeah, I agree, Don. If we're hip, don't buy 99% of the stuff out there. Yes, it's a distraction. Some of it's a distraction. Some of it's direct programming. It's a mixed bag. Total poppycock. Absolutely. So with that, guys, hey, Russell, as far as I can tell, is here. If you haven't checked out his channel, do that. As far as I can tell channel, also check out Trey Clark Theories. It's another good one. Try to cover everybody in here. Certainly good times for all. You know him. Zach is just awesome. Let's see, Rose 777, of course, check out that because that's usually when you'll find the PoppyCock Report, Tuesdays and Thursdays at this time. Make sure and check out Wayne McCroy, of course, Secrets of Saturn, Crow 777 Radio, all the usual suspects. You can find a bunch of great information. And I will say, as I typically do, don't trust me, right? I'm just trying to point out some of the stuff. Go look for yourself, use good discernment. It's nothing, I would absolutely be very disappointed if you just took my word for something and believed it, because that's just exchanging one narrative for another, right? The best way is to understand it for yourself. Yeah, everybody says do your own research, but spend the time and understand it for yourself. Come to a place where you're comfortable with where you're at. Some things may just sound good, right? Or it resonates well with you. And that's a great starting point. But don't just absorb it at that point and try to parrot it. Make sure that you understand for yourself what the story is. I'm going to throw this out here. I got a bunch of these I do not consent stickers. So if you want those, you can do it for free. You can get those for free by sending me an email to unintended. I hope I spell this right. I always make a mistake here. Consequences3@gmail.com. Send me your address, and I will send you one of those stickers for free. Yeah, I got a bunch of those I can send to you. So I do not consent. You can stick that all over yourself, or on your car, or on your bike, or your Prius or whatever. So there you have that. Not Chiquita. Cheers to you, my friend. And I had a great conversation, great time talking to you last week. And so we'll also, if you join me Saturday mornings at 9 a.m., I'll have more stories of transformation and the Awakening Project. We'll see what I can get hooked up for the Saturday. So again, thanks for joining me this morning, and wish Rose all the best. I'm sure they'll get it worked out. Rose and Jason, they're awesome people. And thanks so much, guys. Have a nice day, Joe and everybody. Again, I appreciate you guys showing up and being part of this. Let's again, I keep saying this. You may not be able to change the world, but you can probably change the world around you, and that's a good start. So with that, guys, have a great day. Love to everybody, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.